Hello there, my name is José Bernardes and I will be the one telling you what's happening in Brazil today. We begin with the week's latest news.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro took part in yet another unconstitutional anti-democracy protest last Sunday, May 3rd. Amid a pandemic, once more, the president, without wearing a mask, greeted his followers who gathered in front of the presidential palace, calling for the closure of Congress and the Supreme Court, as well as a military intervention in the country. Journalists from one of the biggest newspapers in the country who were covering the protest were assaulted with kicks, punches, and shoves by supporters of the government. The previous Friday, during International Workers' Day, health professionals were also assaulted by Bolsonaro supporters. The health workers were taking part in a silent protest in which they held up black crosses, alluding to those who died from COVID-19. A man dressed in the national colors green and yellow assaulted the nurses verbally and physically. The march Sunday, which featured Bolsonaro, gained international attention. The British newspaper The Guardian lamented the attacks on members of the press and declared that Bolsonaro incites protests challenging health guidelines. The French publication Le Monde highlights in a headline that Bolsonaro is ever more isolated from the leadership of the health department. The reporting also tells us that Bolsonaro tries to attack state governors in his speeches. According to a poll done in April, the administration's disapproval rating went up from 42 to 49% due to the political crisis.
In Brazil, the large-scale production of agricultural goods is directed mainly towards export. During the biggest pandemic in history, it has become clear that family agriculture is feeding the poor populations within cities. Thought they are important, rural families are not receiving any type of incentives from federal government.
With more than 4 million families involved in the trade, today, family agriculture is the main supplier meeting the demands of the poor urban population in the ghettos of Brazil, suffering amid the worsening of the pandemic.
Family agriculture takes care of the earth and feeds the world. We have been doing food drives through rural works associations, putting together food baskets that are distributed to urban families, the ghettos, communities that are in need of food.
To ensure that the food from rural areas reaches the cities, it is necessary for the government to be attentive to producers. The main difficulty is in the lack of a logistics network and in the dismantling of national food programs that utilize family farm products. Despite the abandonment of rural families, deeds of solidarity led by farm workers surface all over the country.
Many initiatives sustained by ties of solidarity have enabled products coming from family agricultures are available to the most vulnerable in society. Because of this, it is important to ensure the supply at the local and regional levels, as well as protect the family farming infrastructures.
The Landless Workers Movement alone, MST, has distributed more than 500 tons of food in the country's ghettos, where 6.5% of the population lives in extreme poverty, with the pandemic only making things worse.
In 2018, the cultural sector in Brazil employed more than 5 million people. However, more than half of these professionals work autonomously, with no formal employment ties. Since the start of the Jair Bolsonaro government, culture has been under attack. Now, in the face of the pandemic, the situation is only getting worse for these professionals.
Cultural activities were some of the first to stop during the pandemic, affecting cinema showings, music concerts, play releases, and art exhibitions. All activities that depend on large gatherings and the sale of tickets have been halted. A study done by the São Paulo Music Conference showed that more than 5,000 concerts were canceled, costing the industry around $92 million in revenue in 18 different states. However, the crisis mainly hits the cultural production chain, especially those working backstage or behind the cameras.
Nós temos artistas, produtores.
We've got artists, producers, technicians, wardrobe designers, makeup artists, the setup workers, backstage personnel, the logistic folks, and much more, from lighting to electricians. Actually, it's difficult to say who works with culture in Brazil, precisely because it's an autonomous sector.
Justamente por ser setor autônomo.
Se no geral, né, o trabalhador...
If in general workers in the cultural sector face precarious conditions, like double, triple shifts, in which we have to do so many gigs to make ends meet, and now we have to hustle doing things in different areas that are not our main profession, to fill this hole in our budget.
Esse rombo no orçamento, né?
Without specific policies geared towards the culture sector, workers urgently await to receive emergency aid from the federal government.
A gente teve aí em vários estados.
What we are seeing in different states is collectives reaching out to their elected representatives, seeking emergency assistance for a very atypical situation. What has happened is a complete marginalization of this sector, while there is aid for other, richer ones.
Com setores ricos.
Cultura, ela é...
Culture is crucial for us to overcome such a difficult moment, especially because culture dictates certain changes in the very thought process in society, precisely why it is so criminalized by conservatives.
Conservadores, né?
It's time for our taste segment. It's time for Brazilianism.
Cambuci is a fruit from the Atlantic forest, native to the state of São Paulo, yet unknown to many residents of the region. The tree it grows on is in danger of extinction. It used to be common, but with the deforestation of the Atlantic forest, the tree is almost gone. Cambuci has a secret. It only ripens while still on the tree, and can only be eaten ripe. Therefore, the fruit is only picked once it has fallen from the tree. The recipe we'll be making is a cambuci mousse. When you peel the ripe cambuci, the skin will come off like this, look, in a thin layer. You will then know that the cambuci is ripe. In my mousse, we will only use 2 cans of condensed milk, half a dozen fruits, half peeled, half unpeeled. Just mix it in a blender and done.
That's all for today, folks. We'll see you next week.